It all started to fall apart the moment I lost my job. One day, I was a confident man with a steady income, respected at work, engaged to the woman I loved. The next, I was sitting on our couch in sweatpants, staring at an empty inbox, refreshing it every few minutes like it owed me something. Rejection after rejection. Silence. Hope slipping away with every passing day. Amanda said she understood. First, she kissed my forehead, brought me coffee in the mornings, said things like, "We'll get through this together." And I believed her. I wanted to believe that the woman who promised forever meant it, even when things got hard. But then, the little things started to change. She stopped asking how my day was. She stayed late at work more often. She'd take her phone into the bathroom, laugh at messages I wasn't part of, and when I asked who it was, she'd say, "Just work stuff." I told myself not to be paranoid. I was the one who had changed, after all. I wasn't the same confident man she'd fallen in love with. I was unemployed, restless, a little bitter, maybe even hard to love. Maybe I was just imagining things. But one night I saw the Uber receipt. She was asleep next to me. Her phone buzzed, not unusual. But something in me, maybe instinct or plain desperation, made me check. There it was, a ride from a downtown hotel back to our apartment, time-stamped at 2:13 a.m. The night she said she was crashing at a friend's place after a late meeting. My heart dropped. My hands shook. I didn't wake her. Couldn't. I just stared at the screen, that little line of text that confirmed my worst fear. And still, I needed more proof. Some stupid, self-destructive part of me wanted it to be something else. Anything else. The next day, I followed her. She told me she had a client meeting. Dressed nicer than usual. Perfume, expensive, thick in the air. Lipstick she hadn't worn in months. I sat in my car across the street from the restaurant, engine off, fingers tight around the steering wheel. She walked in. Not alone. He was tall, clean-cut, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. And the way she looked at him, that smile, the way she touched his arm when she laughed, it wasn't business. It was intimacy. It was betrayal. It was everything she'd taken from me and given to someone else without a second thought. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. I drove home and sat in the dark, staring at our engagement photo on the mantel. The Amanda in that photo looked so in love, so committed. But now I didn't know who she was anymore. The woman I loved was gone. And all I had left was the truth I didn't want to face. The days that followed were a blur of numbness. I stopped applying to jobs. What was the point? My mind was no longer occupied with resumes and cover letters. It was hijacked by her laughter, by the way she looked at that man. The image looped in my head like some kind of cruel punishment. I still slept beside her, still heard her say, "I love you," before bed, and every time, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I started noticing more. Her perfume lingered longer when she came home. Her phone was always on silent, always face down. She used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter. Now it never left her side. When I asked her how work was, she'd give short, vague answers. Fine. Same old. No details. No warmth. Just enough to shut me up. One evening, I finally broke. She came home later than usual. Said she had to stay for an impromptu meeting. Her hair was tousled in that way it gets after someone runs their hands through it. Her blouse was buttoned unevenly. Her lipstick was smudged. And when she walked past me to the kitchen, she didn't even flinch. She acted like everything was normal. "Amanda," I said, my voice cracking despite every effort to stay composed. "Are you seeing someone?" She froze, her back still turned to me. For a second, I thought she might lie. I prayed she would, because hearing the truth out loud would make it real. She didn't lie. She turned around slowly, her eyes already glossy with guilt. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, as if that somehow softened the blow. I don't know. Things between us changed. You changed." I wanted to scream, throw something, demand to know how she could blame me for her betrayal. But I didn't. I just sat there, letting her words pour over me like acid. "You changed. As if losing my job meant I lost my worth. As if my pain gave her permission to find comfort in someone else's arms. I felt alone, she continued, as if that excused everything. He was just there. He listened. He made me feel wanted. I stared at her, realizing in that moment that I didn't know who she was anymore. Not really. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger. A stranger wearing the skin of someone I used to love. "So you've been sleeping with him?" I asked, my voice quiet, hollow. She looked down. Didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night, I slept on the couch. Or tried to. My body was exhausted, but my mind was a war zone. Every memory of us together now felt tainted. Every kiss, every late-night talk, every shared dream, all of it poisoned. And yet, some part of me still wanted to fix it. Still clung to the idea that we could somehow come back from this. That part of me was weak. That part of me needed to die. The next morning was unbearable. The silence between us was no longer peaceful or familiar, it was heavy, suffocating. She moved around the apartment like a ghost, careful not to meet my eyes, careful not to speak unless necessary. I could hear her making coffee in the kitchen, the clinking of the spoon against the mug, the slow creak of the cabinet door. Mundane sounds, yet each one seemed louder than ever, each one hammering in the fact that nothing would ever be normal again. I sat there, on the edge of the couch, feeling like a man displaced from his own life. This wasn't my home anymore. Not with this version of her. Not with this aching, raw wound between us. I tried to think of what to say, how to make sense of it all, but no words came. Just one recurring question: how long had she been gone from me before I noticed? She finally spoke, her voice cautious, like she was tiptoeing across broken glass. "I think we need space," she said. Not "I'm sorry," not "let's talk." Just those 4 cold, measured words. Space. As if we were roommates who'd argued over the dishes. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but the absurdity of it hit me like a punch to the ribs. Space? After everything? After hiding him behind my back, sneaking around, pretending to love me while giving herself to someone else? Now she wanted space, not honesty, not accountability. "You already took your space," I said, standing up, barely able to keep my voice steady. "You just forgot to mention it while you were ***king him." Her face flushed with a mix of shame and defensiveness. She tried to respond, to spin it somehow, but I didn't let her. I walked into the bedroom, pulled out the duffel bag from the closet, and began packing. Not because I had anywhere to go, I didn't. But because I couldn't breathe in that apartment anymore. Not with her scent on the pillows. Not with his fingerprints on her skin. She didn't stop me. That was the part that broke me the most. No begging. No tears. Just silence and the occasional glance from across the room as I stuffed socks, jeans, and pieces of a life we once shared into a bag. I left without slamming the door. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of drama. I just wanted out. I needed distance, air, time, anything that didn't smell like her lies. That night, I slept in my car. I parked in the back lot of a 24-hour grocery store, leaned the seat back, and stared through the windshield at the stars. Or maybe it was just city lights. I couldn't tell through the blur of exhaustion and rage. I thought about calling someone, a friend, my brother, but what would I even say? "Hey, Amanda's screwing some guy from work, mind if I crash on your couch?" I couldn't stomach the words. So I stared. And breathed. And wondered how the hell I'd gotten here, homeless by choice, betrayed by the woman I was going to marry, and nowhere near the man I used to be. But one thing had become clear: I wasn't going back. Not ever. I spent the next 3 nights rotating between my car and a cheap motel off the interstate, one of those places that smells like cigarette ash and disappointment. The walls were thin, the water barely warm, and the sheets felt like paper. But at least there was no scent of her perfume, no ghost of our laughter lingering in the corners. Just silence, solitude, and time to unravel what the hell had happened to my life. I kept thinking back to how we used to be. How she used to look at me like I was her anchor. I remembered the night I proposed, that autumn evening in Asheville, the leaves painting the mountains in gold and fire. She cried when I asked her to marry me. Not polite, controlled tears, real ones. She threw her arms around me and whispered, "There's no one else I want to grow old with." I believed her. God, I believed her. So when did that change? Was it the first time I vented about losing the job? Was it the day I couldn't afford our favorite sushi takeout anymore? Or maybe the moment I started doubting myself, the moment I let the shame sink into my bones? I had been a man with purpose, with direction. And then I became a man with excuses. But even in my lowest moments, I was faithful. I was loyal. I was there. And she wasn't. I wanted to call her. Not to yell. Not even to ask why. I just wanted to hear her voice again to test if I still missed her or if what I really missed was the idea of her. But I stopped myself. Every time I picked up the phone, something pulled me back, pride, maybe. Or the echo of her words, you changed. She was right. I had changed. But so had she. I decided to drive to my brother's place on the edge of town. We weren't especially close, but I knew he'd take me in, no questions asked. That's just the kind of guy he was. I didn't tell him everything right away. Just said Amanda and I had hit a rough patch and I needed a place to crash. He gave me the spare room and a beer, and for the first time in a week, I slept without waking up in a sweat. The next morning, I checked my email out of habit, and there it was. A message from Amanda. Just one line, we need to talk. Please. My stomach twisted. I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure if I wanted answers or if I just wanted closure. I didn't know what her version of talk meant anymore. Was it an apology? A confession? Or just more words designed to ease her guilt? Eventually, I typed back, I'll meet you. One time. Public place. She agreed. We chose a quiet little cafe we used to go to when we were still us. The irony wasn't lost on me. I arrived early. Sat by the window. Ordered black coffee even though I hated it without cream. My hands were cold, my leg bouncing under the table. And then she walked in. She looked different. Not in the way she dressed, she was still polished, put together, but in the way she carried herself. There was no warmth in her eyes. Just caution and something else I couldn't quite place. Pity, maybe? She sat down across from me, folded her hands, and said the one thing I didn't expect. I'm moving in with him. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at her, letting the words hang between us like smoke. I'm moving in with him. She said it so plainly, so emotionlessly, as if she were discussing the weather or her weekend plans. No apology. No hesitation. Just a statement of fact that shattered whatever tiny shard of hope might have still been lodged in the back of my mind. I leaned back in my chair, blinking slowly, trying to process. So that's it then? I finally said, my voice lower than I expected. You didn't come here to talk. You came here to inform me. She looked away, eyes fixed on the chipped edge of the table. I thought you deserved to hear it from me, not through someone else. There it was again, that fake moral high ground she liked to take. As if betrayal was somehow less brutal when it came wrapped in personal delivery. I wanted to ask her if she loved him. If he was worth destroying everything we had built. But I didn't. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I still cared enough to ask. Instead, I studied her. The way her hands clutched the coffee cup a little too tightly. The twitch in her jaw when she tried to keep her voice calm. Maybe she wasn't as composed as she pretended to be. He offered stability, she finally said, not meeting my eyes. You were lost. And I couldn't keep being the only one holding everything together. I let out a bitter laugh. You think screwing someone else is what holding it together looks like? She flinched. Good. I wanted her to feel something, anything close to the pain I had been drowning in for weeks. I made mistakes, she said softly. But I didn't plan this. It just happened. Another cliché. Another excuse. It didn't just happen. She let it happen. Again and again. With intention. With secrecy. With lies every time she kissed me goodnight after coming back from his bed. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the floor like a final warning. I don't care where you move. I don't care what happens to you. Just know this, you don't get to rewrite the story like you were some victim in all of this. She looked up and for the first time I saw something flicker in her eyes. Regret? Shame? Maybe. Or maybe just the realization that I wasn't going to beg, wasn't going to fall apart in front of her. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee behind. Good luck, Amanda, I said, walking past her, not looking back. You're going to need it. Outside, the cold air hit my face like a slap. But it felt honest. It felt like truth. I didn't cry. Not then. Not there. But as I sat alone in my car again, the weight of finality pressing down on me, I let the silence swallow me whole. She was really gone. And for the first time, I started to wonder if maybe that was a gift in disguise. The days that followed felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left a shell behind to go through the motions. I stayed at my brother's place, mostly in silence. He didn't press me for details, just let me be. Some nights we'd watch a game, drink a couple beers, and pretend everything was fine. But the truth was, nothing was fine. I was 35, unemployed, abandoned, and sitting in the ruins of a future I had spent years trying to build. I kept thinking about all the plans we had made. The house we wanted in the suburbs, the names we'd picked out for future dogs, the weekend trips we dreamed about when money was better. Gone. Every single one of them erased with one decision. One man. One betrayal. She had taken our blueprint and redrawn it with someone else, and all I was left with were the scraps of memories and unanswered questions. One morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. A photo. From a mutual friend. No words, just the image. Amanda, smiling beside him, arm around his waist, standing in front of a luxury condo building downtown. She was glowing, radiant even, like she hadn't just shattered someone's world. Like none of it ever happened. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen, debating whether to delete it, forward it, respond. In the end, I just turned the phone off and set it face down. That was the moment it hit me. She was already living her next chapter, and I was still stuck rereading the last sentence of ours. She had moved on, made peace with whatever version of the story helped her sleep at night. And I was still here, bitter, broken, drowning in what-ifs. So I started writing. Not to her, not even about her. Just writing. Everything I felt. The rage, the humiliation, the loneliness. I filled page after page in a cheap spiral notebook my brother had lying around. It wasn't therapy. It didn't make the pain go away. But it helped me feel like I was reclaiming something. My voice, maybe. My truth. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to shift. I started waking up before noon. Started going for walks. I applied for jobs again. Not the high-level ones I used to chase, just something to get me moving. I landed a temp gig at a warehouse. Manual labor, long hours, minimum wage, but it was mine. Mine to earn. Mine to own. Each day, I felt a little less like her shadow. A little more like myself. And then, one afternoon, I ran into her. It happened by pure accident. One of those cruel jokes life likes to play when you finally start to breathe again. I had just finished a shift at the warehouse. 12 hours on my feet, sore muscles, sweat soaked through my shirt. I stopped at a small cafe on the way home. One I hadn't been to in years, just wanting something warm. Something that felt normal. And there she was, Amanda, sitting at a corner table, alone this time. No designer coat, no carefully painted smile, no expensive handbag resting on the chair beside her. Just Amanda, dressed simply, her hair pulled back, no makeup. Her eyes were tired, her posture slouched. She looked a human. I froze. She saw me almost instantly. Her gaze caught mine, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The noise of the cafe faded. The clinking cups, the soft jazz in the background, the hum of quiet conversations. All of it muted beneath the weight of that unexpected moment. Then she smiled. A weak, uncertain smile. The kind people give when they're unsure whether they're welcome. I could have walked away, pretended not to see her. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe the hunger for some kind of final clarity, made me approach. "Hey!" I said, my voice dry from surprise and exhaustion. She blinked, startled by the sound of it, then gestured to the empty seat across from her. "Want to sit for a minute?" I hesitated, then sat. The silence between us was thick. I noticed her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for her cup. No wedding ring, no trace of him anywhere. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. "I heard you were working again," she said softly, like the words themselves might break. I nodded. "Warehouse. It's not glamorous, but it's honest." She nodded too, looked down at her coffee. "That's good. I'm glad." I studied her. The Amanda I had known was gone, but not in the way I had expected. This wasn't the confident, radiant woman from the condo photo. This was someone smaller, quieter, almost sadder. A person who had made choices and was now living with them. What happened? I finally asked, not even sure what part of the story I was referring to, him, us, her unraveling. She exhaled slowly. "He left. Said it was too complicated. Said he didn't want to be responsible for." What came next? I didn't react. I didn't gloat. I didn't say "I told you so," even though I had every right. "And now?" I asked. "I'm starting over," she said, barely above a whisper. "Different job. Small apartment. No one waiting at home." We sat in silence for a while longer. Two people who used to be everything, now just a ghost of a memory sitting at a cafe table. I could feel her searching my face, maybe hoping to find anger or longing or some trace of love. But there was none left. And for the first time, I realized that was freedom. We didn't exchange numbers. We didn't make promises to stay in touch or check in on each other. When I stood up to leave, Amanda looked like she wanted to say something, maybe ask if I still hated her, maybe apologize again, maybe tell me she missed me. But I didn't give her the chance. I just gave her a small nod, turned, and walked out into the fading sunlight, letting the door close quietly behind me. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to salvage. The air outside felt lighter somehow. Like I had been dragging chains behind me for months and now finally I dropped them. I didn't feel victorious. There was no dramatic swell of music in the background, no cinematic redemption arc. Just a subtle, steady peace. The kind you don't notice until you realize you haven't clenched your jaw in a while. The kind that comes not from erasing pain, but from surviving it. In the weeks that followed, I kept my head down. I worked hard. Saved every dollar. Started paying back the debts I'd ignored during my spiral. I moved out of my brother's spare room and into a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much cracked tiles, noisy plumbing, creaky floors, but it was mine. Mine to clean. Mine to furnish. Mine to heal in. Sometimes I'd see glimpses of Amanda not in person but in the scent of a stranger's perfume, in a familiar laugh overheard in the supermarket. For a split second, my body would tense, expecting a confrontation, a memory, a regret. But then I'd blink and it would pass. The ghosts were fading. I started writing again, but differently this time. Not about betrayal or heartbreak, but about growth. About rebuilding. About what it means to lose everything and still find something worth holding onto. I didn't know if it would ever become anything, a blog, a book, maybe just pages in a drawer, but it felt good to create instead of collapse. And then one evening, after a particularly long shift, I found myself driving past our old apartment. I hadn't meant to. The car just turned that way, like muscle memory or fate or unfinished business. The windows were dark. The balcony was bare. A for lease sign hung awkwardly from the gate. I parked across the street and sat there for a long while, watching the silence of it. The life we lived there, the laughter, the arguments, the nights tangled up in each other, it was gone. Just a hollow structure now. For walls and nothing else. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I just remembered. And then I started the car and drove away, not looking back. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I was looking forward. Healing didn't come in a rush. There were no grand revelations or sudden moments of clarity where everything magically made sense. It came slowly, in quiet moments, the first time I laughed without feeling guilty, the first night I slept through without dreams of her face, the first morning I woke up and didn't feel the urge to check my phone for a message that would never come. It was like learning to walk again, one careful, shaky step at a time. I met new people. At first, I kept everyone at a distance. I didn't want to talk about my past, didn't want to open up that part of me again. I wasn't ready. But then, little by little, I began to lower the walls. I told fragments of my story, never the whole thing, just enough to be honest. And surprisingly, people understood. Turns out, betrayal is more common than we think. Everyone's carrying something. Everyone's been broken in some way. There was one woman, Claire. She worked the front desk at a logistics company we partnered with. Smart, sharp-tongued, with a dry wit that disarmed me the moment we met. We started talking during pickups and drop-offs, trading sarcastic remarks and little jokes. At first, it was just harmless banter. But then I started looking forward to those moments. I'd take the longer route just to pass by her station. She noticed. One day, she called me out. "You gonna ask me out, or are we just going to flirt like middle schoolers until we retire?" I laughed genuinely for the first time in what felt like forever. So I asked her out. Our first date was simple, a greasy burger joint with neon lights and sticky tables, the kind of place that's too loud to be awkward. And it was easy. She didn't ask too many questions. She didn't push. She just listened, laughed, shared stories about her own scars, nothing romanticized, just real. I didn't tell her everything about Amanda, not yet. But I told her enough. And she didn't flinch. Being with Claire wasn't about filling a void or replacing something lost. It was about starting fresh. With honesty. With caution, yes, but also with hope. There were still nights when the memories crept in. When the old apartment would surface in dreams, when I'd hear Amanda's voice in a song or smell something familiar that pulled me back. But those moments no longer held power. They were just echoes. And I had learned how to let them fade. The truth is, I wasn't the same man I was before the betrayal. And thank God for that. That man believed love alone was enough. That man ignored red flags, overlooked silences, and held on too tightly to something already slipping away. This new man, the one sitting across from Claire in a diner booth, fingers stained with ketchup and eyes lit with quiet amusement, this man had learned something more valuable than blind loyalty. He had learned how to let go. Looking back now, it's strange how something that once felt like the end of my world became the beginning of a completely different one. Pain changes you. Betrayal changes you. But survival shapes you into something new, something sharper, more honest, more aware. And though I wouldn't wish what I went through on anyone, I can say this with certainty, it carved away the pieces of me that were naive, that tolerated too much, that believed love meant staying, no matter the cost. Amanda was a chapter, an important one, yes, but just a chapter. For a long time, I treated her like the whole book. I built my identity around being hers, around our shared plans, our shared future. When that crumbled, I thought I had nothing left. But what I didn't realize was that underneath all that ruin, there was still me. Still a man worth knowing. Still a soul worth healing. I see that now in the way I show up for myself, in the quiet pride I take in each paycheck earned through honest work, in the way I listen when Claire talks and actually hear her, not just wait to respond. I carry the lessons of that heartbreak with me, but they no longer weigh me down. They guide me. They remind me of my boundaries, of my worth, of the red flags I'll never again ignore. There are still scars. Of course there are. But they don't burn anymore. They're just their quiet, faded proof that I survived something that tried to break me. And in a way, I'm grateful for them. Because they remind me of who I used to be and how far I've come. Sometimes I imagine running into Amanda again, years from now, maybe in another city, in another life. Maybe she'll be with someone else. Maybe I will too. Maybe we'll lock eyes for a brief second, and maybe she'll wonder if I ever truly forgave her. And I'll smile. Because by then, forgiveness won't be about her anymore. It'll be about me, about the peace I've made, the life I've built, the strength I found not in her arms but in walking away from them. This story didn't end the way I thought it would. But maybe, just maybe, it ended the way it needed to. And for that, I'm finally okay.